We should generally be eating more whole foods. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. Now, when I make this statement, that is not an absolute dogmatic statement that all processing is always bad, and in some cases, some refined foods are not better than their whole counterparts, or that there's not benefits to certain ones. So let me make that clear. This is not a dogmatic, oh, this applies to everything, okay? But we can definitely apply it to most foods, and if you understand the why, then we can know how to find the exceptions. I mean, a perfect example of an exception before I get into this, because while we're talking about dairy, whey protein. Whey protein, very processed food, tons of health benefits, but why? Because it's a high quality protein, right? We don't care if we've stripped nutritional values, many of them out of protein, because protein itself, when overfed or in large amounts, has enormous benefits to us for body composition, full stop, okay? So that is absolutely an obvious exception, right? Anytime you can add more protein, it's going to help body composition, recomposition, stuff like that. So even if it's in the case of it being refined, it's not necessarily a downside, okay? So protein, egg whites, all of that would be perfect examples. But let's come over and let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, the opposite end, to where no protein is in the dairy. No protein. It's all been stripped out. The exact literal opposite. See where we're about to go? And I like using the whey protein as a segue into this, because we just pointed out, well, if the other stuff is stripped out, we're still going to get enormous benefits from the protein. Okay. That's an important point if we're going to talk about processing. Let's go over and let's talk about whole milk versus butter. All right, perfect example. And it's one of those that people can't get their head around. You get people who are like, but butter is just milk, but it's not, right? And I want to be clear, I am absurdly pro-milk. I am one of the most pro-dairy people you will possibly meet. Like, I think dairy is the cat's meow. Right? Dairy is the greatest thing. It's actually better than sliced bread. All right, full stop. Some of it has to be processed for everyone to be able to consume it. But once you do that, the magic comes right back. All right, lactose intolerant people. All right, fine. We have ultra filtered. We have lactose free milk. We have Greek yogurts. We have certain cheeses. They can do all these things. Okay, it works great. We get all those benefits still. Wonderful. Right? Dairy's amazing. Amazing body composition improving food. And at the end of the day, if body composition improves, other health markers tend to improve to some extent, no matter what else is going on. This is why I push it so much. In other words, if you gain muscle, most of your health risk factors go down. If you lose fat, most of your health risk factors go down and your blood work improves, even if your diet is not great. The mere act of losing body fat improves health and reduces inflammation. Proves insulin sensitivity. This is not even subject to debate. Like, being fat is the worst thing you can do for your health overall. It's up near the top, with a few extreme exceptions. All right, now that being said, dairy, awesome. But then what happens when we look at the studies, right? Butter doesn't do it like dairy does, doesn't do like milk does in studies. You look at studies on milk, and this is a perfect example. Perfect example. Milk does not elevate bad cholesterol, LDL cholesterol. It doesn't elevate it in studies. Whole milk doesn't. People drink several glasses of it, no change. People say, oh, well, that's strange, but it doesn't have the saturated fat. It does. But the matrix and context of the saturated fat along with the type matters. It matters, right? It's not about the one ingredient. It's about the matrix of the whole food, the context of your whole diet and lifestyle. Now, butter has had everything else stripped out, and it's almost entirely just saturated fat. Now we can have that conversation. It's been taken out of the matrix of the whole food. All right. What happens when butter is given to people in studies? Exact opposite. Bad cholesterol goes up. In some cases, triglycerides goes up. We see some insulin resistance, right? We see all these negatives. And then people say, well, how can that be? It's just milk. But it's not. It isn't milk. It is a byproduct of milk that's been stripped out, that has no protein. Whereas in whey protein's the other end of the spectrum, right? It's a byproduct of making cheese. It's a waste product from making cheese. Well, we're going to have cheese. Cheese isn't going anywhere. So we have millions and millions of tons of whey protein around the world. Okay? There's benefits to it. Right? But it's the opposite end. It's almost entirely protein. Butter is made almost entirely of milk fat before we churn it and process it and do all of that. So what's the difference? Why this massive change? Well, guess what? Here's what the data seems to suggest. And a lot of the researchers are like, well, why doesn't milk do it? And it turns out we think both the protein and the electrolytes, all the calcium and the magnesium and things in the whole milk, you ready for it? They're cardioprotective. What? Well, they're potentially cardioprotective. So in other words, the saturated fat in it could be a problem, but the other aspects of the whole food tend to blunt that effect to where we look at it and go, it doesn't really seem to be a problem. It's not like it improves these markers. There are certain things that will improve those, right? Certain fats, like certain omega-3 fats and stuff, will improve those health markers. Whole milk seems to be neutral. In other words, the negatives of the saturated fats seem to get offset enough by the other components of the food that it doesn't seem to be a problem. Well, hey, great. But what happens when you strip all those things out? Which is exactly what happens. Actually, it's what happens with heavy cream. The heavy cream butter is made from is skimmed off. We lose all those things. There's no protein, almost no calcium, almost no magnesium. 95% of those things have been stripped out. The cardioprotective things that we want, the reasons we want milk is for those things, by the way. The quality of protein and the electrolyte content is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. It's a superfood. Well, you take them out and then you get butter. What happens? Well, your blood work looks like crap in the studies. It's very straightforward because we've taken the good stuff out and we've taken an otherwise healthy whole food with a lot of benefits and we've stripped the good stuff out to get this refined product. And it does exactly everything that we say, well, this is why we shouldn't eat a bunch of ultra-processed foods. Butter literally does those things, right? We see it. Pretty straightforward. Very straightforward. And it's a perfect example. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.